Have you ever felt a connection with someone that you just can't explain with words? That moment when you look into another person's eyes and you feel like you're seeing something beyond the surface, almost as if two souls are recognizing each other after a long time apart. This kind of connection is rare. It's so rare that most people go through their entire lives without ever experiencing it. And there's a reason for that. A reason that Eckhart Tolle explains in a way that will completely change how you understand love. The love between two awakened people is unlike anything you've ever seen. I'm not talking about the romantic love you see in movies. I'm not talking about that blazing infatuation that burns bright for a few months and then turns to ashes. I'm talking about something much deeper, something that most people don't even know exists. If you've ever had relationships that started wonderfully and ended in pain, if you've ever wondered why love seems so difficult, if you've ever felt like there must be something more than this cycle of hope and disappointment, you're in the right place, because today I'm going to show you what Tolle discovered about the true nature of love. And once you understand this, you'll never see relationships the same way again. Tolle makes a fundamental distinction that most people have never heard. He separates what we call love into two completely different categories. On one side, there's what he calls egoic love. On the other side, there's true love, transcendental love. Egoic love is what most people experience. It's that love that comes filled with expectations. That love that says, I love you because you make me feel good. That love that needs the other person to be a certain way in order to continue existing. You know this kind of love. It's the love that turns into anger when the person doesn't do what you want. It's the love that turns into jealousy when you feel like you might lose them. It's the love that oscillates between adoration and resentment, sometimes in the same day. Tolle explains that this type of love isn't really love at all. It's a strategy of the ego to avoid surrender. You're looking for something in another person that can only come from within you. You're using the other person as a substitute for the inner peace that you haven't yet found. And that's why this type of love is so unstable, because it depends on external conditions. It depends on how the other person behaves. It depends on them continuing to make you feel special. True love is completely different. Tolle says that true love has no opposite. Egoic love has an opposite, which is hate. You can love someone intensely today and hate that same person tomorrow because it wasn't true love. It was need disguised as love. But true love doesn't oscillate. It doesn't depend on conditions. It doesn't need the other person to be perfect or behave a certain way. It simply is. And here's the key that changes everything. Tolle explains that true love can only exist between people who have already found that source of love within themselves. People who aren't looking for completeness in another person. People who are already whole. When two people like that meet, something magical happens. They're not trying to take anything from each other. They're not trying to fill a void. They're simply sharing the fullness that already exists in each of them. And that completely changes the dynamic of the relationship. Instead of two incomplete people trying to complete each other, you have two complete people choosing to be together, not out of necessity, not out of neediness, but out of a celebration of life that overflows from the inside out. Tolle has lived this in practice with his partner Kim Eng. She describes their relationship in a way that perfectly illustrates this difference. She says that being with Eckhart is like being with someone who has no agenda. He's not trying to change her. He's not projecting expectations. He's simply present. And that presence creates a space where love can flourish naturally, without force, without manipulation, without games. But here's something that Tolle makes very clear, and this might surprise you. He says that relationships don't exist to make you happy. Relationships exist to make you conscious. This shift in perspective is revolutionary. Most people enter relationships looking for happiness, looking for someone who will make them feel good, looking for the right person who will solve all their emotional problems. And when the relationship inevitably brings challenges, they think that something is wrong, that they chose the wrong person, that the love is gone. But Tolle suggests a completely different view. He says that if you accept that the relationship exists to make you conscious instead of happy, the relationship can become a path to salvation. Each conflict becomes an opportunity for growth. Each challenge becomes a mirror, showing where you still have inner work to do. Each moment of difficulty becomes a chance to practice presence. Tolle describes the typical cycle of conventional relationships in a way that you might recognize. In the beginning, everything seems perfect. You're in love. The other person seems to be exactly what you've always been looking for. They fill a void that you didn't even know existed. You feel complete, alive, happy. But inevitably, this state doesn't last. The feelings of fear, pain, and lack that are intrinsic to egoic consciousness resurface. And just like any addiction, there comes a point when the drug no longer works for you. When that happens, you start to perceive your partner as the cause of these painful feelings. You project onto him or her all the blame for what you're feeling, and the relationship starts to oscillate between the poles of love and hate. Tolle says that it's not uncommon for couples to become addicted to these cycles. The emotional intensity, even when negative, can become a way to feel alive. Some people prefer the drama to the monotony. They prefer the intense pain to the emptiness. But that's not the path of true love. That's the path of suffering, and there is an alternative. This doesn't mean that the relationship can't be happy. It means that happiness comes as a consequence of consciousness, not as the primary objective. When two people are committed to mutual growth, when they see challenges as opportunities instead of problems, when they use the relationship as a spiritual practice, something extraordinary happens. The relationship stops being a source of suffering and becomes a path of awakening. Now let me explain something that Tolle calls one of the biggest obstacles to true love, the pain body. Have you ever noticed how sometimes you react completely out of proportion in a relationship? How a seemingly small comment can trigger a huge emotional explosion? How you can go from love to rage in a matter of seconds? This often happens because of something called the pain body. It's the accumulation of all the unprocessed emotional pain that you carry. Every past hurt you've never healed. Every childhood wound that's still raw. And when you're in an intimate relationship, the pain body finds the perfect environment to feed on. Eckhart Tolle explains that one person's pain body can activate the other person's pain body, and suddenly, you're not just having a discussion with your partner, you're having a battle between two pain bodies, two entities of pain, feeding off each other, and neither of you are truly present. Neither of you are aware of what's really happening. You're both possessed by old patterns of pain. This is why so many relationships feel like a battlefield. It's not because people are inherently bad or incompatible. It's because they're unaware of the pain body and how it operates. But when two awakened people come together, something different happens. They recognize the pain body. They know when it's being activated, and they don't identify with it. When an awakened person feels the pain arising, they don't explode. They observe, they breathe, they bring awareness to what's happening, and that awareness changes everything. Instead of attacking their partner, they might say, I'm feeling a lot of pain right now. This isn't about you. This is about something old in me that's been triggered. This transparency creates real intimacy. This vulnerability creates true connection. And when the partner is also awakened, they don't take it personally. They don't get defensive. They simply offer presence and compassion. This kind of dynamic is only possible between conscious people, and it's why love between awakened people is so radically different. Eckhart Tolle's partner shared something interesting about being in a relationship with someone who is awakened. She said that, in the beginning, it required an adjustment. Because Eckhart doesn't react the way we're used to. He doesn't defend himself. He doesn't counterattack. He simply remains present. And that can be disconcerting for someone who is used to the normal patterns of relationships. You expect a reaction, and you don't get one. You expect drama, and you find peace. You expect conflict, and you find acceptance. But over time, she realized that this way of being was exactly what created space for true love to flourish. Without defensiveness, there is no attack. Without attack, there are no wounds. Without accumulated wounds, love can flow freely. She also mentioned that living with someone awakened doesn't mean everything is perfect all the time. Challenges still exist. Differences still need to be navigated. But the way you deal with those challenges is completely different. There's no blame. There's no victimhood. There's no attempt to manipulate the other person. There are just two conscious people working together to find solutions, without losing connection in the process. If this content is helping you understand your own patterns in relationships, hit the like button on this video. It helps me know I'm on the right track and motivates me to keep bringing you these kinds of reflections. Now let me show you another fundamental aspect that Tolle teaches about true love. He says that true love has no wanting, no desire to possess, no need for the partner to change. Think about that. In most relationships, there's an invisible list of changes that each person wants the other to make. If he were more attentive, if she were less critical, if he showed more affection, if she complained less. That list is endless. And it's never fully satisfied because it comes from a place of lack, not of fullness. Tolle suggests something radical. He says that the greatest catalyst for change in a relationship is the complete acceptance of the partner, exactly as they are, without needing to judge, without needing to change. That seems contradictory, doesn't it? How can complete acceptance create change? But that's exactly what happens. When a person feels completely accepted, they relax. They stop defending themselves. They stop pretending to be someone they're not. And in that space of acceptance, they can naturally evolve. Resistance creates more resistance. Acceptance creates space for transformation. Tolle says that this complete acceptance takes you immediately beyond the ego, because the ego always wants to change, control, manipulate. When you accept completely, the ego has nowhere to grab hold. And it's from that place beyond the ego that true love can flow. But hold on, because now comes something even more profound. Tolle makes an observation that goes against everything that culture has taught us about love. He says that love is not selective. True love is like the sunlight. It doesn't choose who to illuminate. It simply shines on everyone. That means that true love doesn't make one person special. It's not exclusive. Exclusivity is not true love. It's egoic love. I know that might sound strange. After all, isn't that exactly what we're looking for in a relationship? Someone who makes us feel special? Someone who chooses us above all others? Tolle explains that this desire to be special comes from the ego. The ego needs to feel superior, unique, chosen, and it uses relationships to feed that need. But true love doesn't work that way. True love recognizes the same essence in everyone. It sees beyond the form, beyond the personality, beyond the superficial characteristics. It sees the consciousness that exists in every being. When two awakened people come together, they love each other not because one makes the other feel special. They love each other because they recognize each other in essence. They see beyond the ego, beyond the personality, beyond the personal history. And that recognition is much deeper than any feeling of being special. Tolle describes this in a beautiful way. He says that without the recognition of the formless within you, there can be no true transcendental love. If you cannot recognize the formless in yourself, you cannot recognize yourself in the other. And the recognition of the other as yourself in essence, that is true love. That's one of the most profound statements about love that I've ever encountered. True love is recognizing yourself in the other and seeing that beneath all the superficial differences, there is the same consciousness, the same presence, the same essence. When you see that, how can there be real conflict? How can there be judgment? How can there be a need to change the other? The other is yourself in another form. Now, let me share some practical characteristics that Eckhart Tolle identifies in relationships between awakened individuals. First, there's space, a lot of space. Awakened people don't need to be glued together constantly. They aren't afraid of separation because they know that true connection doesn't depend on physical proximity. Tolle says that space is a critical component of enlightened relationships. This space allows each person to continue their individual journey of growth. It allows each person to have their own spiritual practice, their own interests, their own time for solitude. Egoic love is afraid of space. It interprets space as distancing, as a lack of love. But conscious relationships understand that space is where love breathes. Second, there's total transparency. Awakened people express their thoughts and feelings as soon as they arise. They don't let unexpressed emotions fester and grow. They don't create gaps of time where hurts can accumulate. Tolle recommends that couples who want to use the relationship as a spiritual practice make an agreement. The agreement to express thoughts and feelings to each other as soon as they arise, or as soon as a reaction appears. This requires courage. It requires vulnerability, but it creates an intimacy that superficial relationships can never achieve. Third, there's an absence of judgment. Awakened people stop judging themselves and then stop judging their partners. They understand that judgment is a function of the ego, and they choose to operate from a place beyond the ego. This doesn't mean that everything is permitted. Healthy boundaries still exist. But the way to establish those boundaries changes completely. It comes from clarity, not from judgment. It comes from love, not from criticism. Fourth, there's genuine attention. Tolle describes a genuine relationship as one that isn't dominated by the ego. There's a flow of open and alert attention toward the other, with no wanting. This quality of attention is rare. In most interactions, even with people we love, there's always some wanting underneath. We want something from the person. We want them to make us feel good. We want them to validate our existence. But in conscious relationships, there's pure attention, pure presence, no hidden agenda. Fifth, there's the understanding that love isn't outside. Tolle emphasizes that love is a state of being. Your love isn't outside. It's deeply within you. You can never lose it, and it can never leave you. It doesn't depend on another body, on another external form. Awakened people understand this deeply. They aren't looking for love in another person. They've already found the love within themselves. And it's from the overflowing of this internal love that they relate. This changes the energy of the relationship completely. There's no desperation. There's no neediness. There's no fear of losing, because what is true can never be lost. Tolle uses a powerful metaphor to illustrate this. He compares love to a glass that's already full. When you relate from a full glass, you aren't trying to get the other person to complete you. You're overflowing, and it's from this overflowing that you offer love. But when you relate from an empty glass, you're always trying to take from the other, always needing, always demanding. And this creates a dynamic of scarcity that suffocates love. Most relationships suffer from this dynamic of scarcity. Two people with empty glasses trying to fill each other up, and neither succeeds because both are in the mode of taking, not of giving. Awakened people have filled their own glasses first. They've found the internal source of love, peace, and fulfillment. And when they relate, they're offering from their overflow. They aren't asking, they're giving. That's a fundamental shift that completely transforms the nature of love. If you're realizing that your past relationships followed patterns that now make more sense, if this explanation from Tolle is illuminating things you'd never understood, the super thanks is a way to support this work. Every contribution helps me continue bringing this kind of transformative content. Now I want to address something important. What if you're not in a relationship with an awakened person? What if your current partner isn't on this journey of consciousness? Tolle has something to say about that too. He says that avoiding relationships to avoid pain isn't the answer. The pain is there anyway. In fact, he suggests that 3 failed relationships in 3 years are more likely to force you to awaken than 3 years on a deserted island. Relationships are powerful teachers. They show where there's still work to do. They reveal our unconscious patterns. They mirror our wounds. So even if your partner isn't consciously on the spiritual path, the relationship can still be your practice. You can still bring presence. You can still observe your reactions. You can still use each challenge as an opportunity for growth. And here's something interesting that Tolle observed. When one person in a relationship starts to awaken, it creates a pressure on the system. The partner will either resist, and eventually the relationship may end, or will start to be affected by the presence of the other and begin their own journey. Presence is contagious. Consciousness spreads. You can't force another person to awaken, but you can be so present, so conscious, and so loving that you create a silent invitation, a space where awakening becomes possible. And that leads us to the final point I want to share. Tolle talks about what happens when 2 awakened people consciously decide to use the relationship as a spiritual practice. When they make that explicit agreement, he says that if you and your partner agree that the relationship will be your spiritual practice, so much the better. You can then express your thoughts and feelings to each other as soon as they arise, so that you don't create a gap of time where an unexpressed emotion or complaint can grow. This type of agreement transforms the relationship into something sacred. Not sacred in the religious sense, sacred in the sense of dedicated to growth, to consciousness, to truth. Every interaction becomes an opportunity to practice. Every conflict becomes a chance to bring more light. Every moment together becomes a shared meditation. Couples who practice this report a profound transformation. Not because the problems disappear, but because the way of dealing with the problems changes completely. Instead of blaming the other, there's curiosity. Instead of defending positions, there's openness. Instead of trying to win the argument, there's a desire to understand and grow. And gradually, the relationship ceases to be a source of pain and becomes a source of awakening. Tolle summarizes this in a way that always resonates with me. He says that when you no longer perceive the world as hostile, there is no more fear. And when there is no more fear, you think, speak, and act differently. Love and compassion arise, and they affect the world. This applies perfectly to relationships. When you stop seeing your partner as a threat, as a source of problems, as an obstacle to your happiness, everything changes. Love and compassion can flow naturally, and this love and this compassion affects not only the relationship, but the world around it. Tolle talks about how conscious relationships create waves of transformation that go far beyond the couple. When two people live in true love, they become a beacon of light in the world. People around them sense something different in their presence. They feel a peace, a harmony that they can't quite explain. It's almost magical. Children of conscious couples grow up in a completely different environment. They don't learn that love is drama. They don't learn that a relationship is a battle. They see presence, acceptance, respect, and that shapes the entire way they will relate in the future. It sets a new standard. Friends, family members, co-workers, all are affected in some way, because consciousness is contagious. Presence spreads, and a couple living in true love becomes a seed of transformation for the entire community around them. This isn't romanticization. It's what Tolle has observed over decades, working with people around the world. The awakening of one transforms many. The true love of two can illuminate hundreds. It's a ripple effect. That's why this inner work is so important. It's not just about you having a better relationship, it's about contributing to the evolution of human consciousness as a whole. Think of it as planting seeds for a better future. If you've made it this far, I want to know, have you ever experienced moments of true connection with someone? Those moments when the ego disappeared and there was only pure presence. Share your experience in the comments below. Tell your story. And if you're in a relationship now, try bringing more presence to your interactions. Observe what happens when you stop judging and simply listen, really listen. Observe what happens when you accept your partner completely, even if just for a few minutes. Let go of expectations and just be. True love isn't something you find, it's something you become. It's a journey of self-discovery, and that transformation starts now, in this moment, with the next person you encounter. Embrace the possibility.